The content of this episode may not be suitable for some audiences. Listener's discretion is advised. Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia and R.E.S.T employee Lauren Gray talk about Lauren's personal story and her journey to wholeness. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Lauren, welcome. The conversation about addictions, I think, is slowly changing. Mm-hmm. And I think the recovery space, if you will, needs a lot of healing. And I know that you have a lot of knowledge, understanding, and you even worked with psychiatrists that helped a lot of people in recovery. Mm-hmm. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your story, because you have a lot of credibility on the back end, in the middle, and on the front end of it all.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm just so grateful to just share my story and just my experience and how hope has come from it. So just starting from the very beginning, I grew up surrounded by addicts. My mother and father used to drink, party, do cocaine. It was the 80s, having fun, smoke marijuana. And then I was brought into the world, and my mother gave it up to raise me, got really involved in the church, while my dad continued to choose the party lifestyle. And later on in my childhood, started dabbling with meth addiction as well. So it was really difficult for me to watch just one extreme and then the other extreme. My mom did the best that she could raising me, and then coming from a broken household as well, just not really in touch with their feelings and who they are, just having a lot of anger and resentment. Same with my father, and that's why he chose that route, and ended up going to jail 3 times when I was in junior high and high school, which just really broke my heart. It was just really confusing for me because I just needed someone to look up to. And I started developing a lot of resentment towards not only my father, but towards my mother, just because I felt like I was just caught in the middle of all of it. And in that, left confused in the chaos, filled with dis-ease within myself and just around me and the world around me. And I soon started turning to marijuana, alcohol, partying, sex, drugs, all of it, while still actually remaining in the church. It was almost like I was trying to live 2 different lifestyles, trying to do both, because I thought that I could have it all. And it was just, again, just very chaotic for me and hard, and I was very confused. So in that, I ended up going into an abusive relationship with the drinking and the partying. I also, in that partying, I ended up being raped by 3 of my friends.
While you were in the relationship?
While I was in the relationship, yes. Ended up being dumped in that relationship because he thought that I was cheating on him because I had been raped by 3 of our friends. Just, again, chaos.
Was that at a social?
It was at a social setting. Mm-hmm, yeah. And it was heartbreaking. I just completely lost myself in it. Just didn't know who I was. And I ended up, turning more to that lifestyle, and ended up becoming depressed, anxious. I was self-harming because I just felt like this inner like turmoil going on inside. And I just didn't know how to express it because I wasn't given the tools on how to express it. So I started just expressing it that way because there was no words to the pain I was feeling and that was building up inside. And I ended up getting back together with that abusive ex, unfortunately, because that's what I thought love was. I didn't really have a good vision on what it was growing up with my parents, and in the fighting and the yelling and the hate, I just thought that's the best it was going to get.
And it was better than being alone.
It was better than being alone. Exactly. I didn't want to be alone because being alone meant death to me. So I was with the abuser, just physically, mentally, emotionally, and psychologically. When you're with a narcissist who knows how to gaslight, you are so confused all the time, like about what reality is. Like you don't even know what your own thoughts are anymore.
Tell us, what did it feel like? How would you describe that measure of dis-ease? Because you were really almost disconnected from yourself. We always talk about your spirit senses things that aren't right. Your soul, your mind, your heart, your will, your conscience at the time was negotiating a lot of things. And then your body was almost dissociating from the whole thing. So what did that feel like? How do you describe?
It felt like illness and sickness. I ended up not only feeling ill and sick in the mind, like feeling that depression, anxiety creep in, but it started manifesting physically as well. Like bladder infections, UTI infections, like all of that. And I just was frail and just unhealthy. I just felt weak, fatigue, and I just wanted to not exist anymore. I just felt like I didn't deserve to have this life that God had given me because there was no point, no hope. I just saw darkness at the end of the road. This is really hard for me to talk about too, because I realized even in my recovery journey over the last almost 5 years now, I have blocked out most of that part of my life. Like it's just completely gone from my memory, just being in that relationship and then getting out of that relationship and what that started looking like when it came to in my addiction. And I've had to uncover a lot of that suppressed, like in my subconscious almost, to be able to really start healing from all of that trauma that I experienced. Because immediately after I got out of that relationship with that abuser, I switched to smoking marijuana every single day, as well as drinking alcohol all the time. And just to go back a little bit, after I'd gotten out of that relationship, I also tried to end my life. And I tried to do it by drinking alcohol and taking a bunch of painkillers.
What exactly led you to that breaking point? Because you had a church community.
I did.
You had friends, you have family.
What led me to that point?
Do you remember?
I do. It's just really hard to talk about. So I'm probably going to cry. But he started to attack me verbally and started to tell everybody that I had cheated on him again after I had broken up with him.
Well, he took a very traumatic, painful event in your life, which was that rape, and he leveraged it to continue to desecrate your character.
Exactly.
And so it was a compounding wound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he just said anything to, I hope you get an STD from the men you are with in the future, to I hope you die alone and
spoke curses
unloved
over you.
And you're worthless. Yes, the curses. And I just rolled with it and believed them. Like, I had already self-harmed quite a bit and had quite a few like cuts on my arms and on my legs. And I just thought there's no point anymore after he had spoken those over me. And that's when I decided to try to end my life on a beach with the painkillers and the alcohol, mixing them. And I just remember taking a picture on that beach and posting it to the world, just saying goodbye, I love you, not like for attention, just really wanting to just say goodbye and that I love everybody. And I just wanted it to just all go away and end. And
just a hard pause here. I think a lot of people can relate to the things you're saying, because we're living in a time where we say such disparaging things to each other out of our own inner conflict. And I hope our listening audience recognizes that when we don't deal with the conflict within ourselves, as obviously he did not, he just verbally vomited on you regularly and spoke curses over you. Thoughts have power, but words have authority. And those words, I profoundly believe, mobilize things in the spiritual realm in such a way that can be so destructive, not to the people that have hurt us and we don't have the natural resources to cope with, but ourselves. So he desecrated himself and literally brought you to the brink of destruction. And I guess I just wanted to take a hard pause here for a minute to encourage everyone to really be thoughtful about what you speak, but also be thoughtful about what you're willing to tolerate. Because it's like letting somebody just blow holes to gouge. It's like letting someone gouge your very soul and sit there immobile and permit it to happen. And I think we can do a lot of things before things get to that point. So
yes.
Anyway, I'm obviously so proud of you. I have the pleasure of working with you, and we have the honor of having you here as our lead technician, brain technician for the R.E.S.T technology and the protocols we run. And you're such a beautiful woman of substance, and I've seen the growth in you in the short time you've been here. So there's a beautiful end to this story. For those of you that are listening and maybe getting very triggered, I would encourage you to listen, continue listening, because this is a beautiful story of the beauty and the ashes of life.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that. It just occurred to me that this can be really triggering for a lot of people listening, and I just wanted to interject that. But tell us, on that beach, there was an interception.
There was. Someone from my church had recognized a rock in the picture I took.
A rock
On the beach. And they were like, I know where that beach is. It's Aliso Creek Beach. Go and find her. Because all my friends were trying to find me at this point. Going to my home, school, just at all my hangout places. They just didn't know where I was. And then just one picture, they found me after I'd already been there for, I don't even know how long. But again, just from what I've been told, I was barely breathing on the beach. I think I had almost choked on my throw up on the beach as well. And my body was rejecting what I was putting into it. And I still remember closing my eyes on that beach before my friends came. And I just remember seeing like just a little light and just finally just thank you. Like, this is the end. Like, take me home, please. I just can't bear this broken and fallen world anymore. I can't take it. But I just remember hearing a still small voice saying, no, it's not your time. I love you, but you have so much more to live for. And then I saw my friends, and then they took me to the hospital, and they started detoxing me and just taking out everything I had put in my body. And I was on 5150 hold for about a week until I got a psychiatrist and a psychologist scheduled and booked. I just wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. It was a requirement for me to be put on a medication before I left as well, because of how severe to the point I had gotten to on that beach, and just seeing all the cuts on my arms and on my legs as well. So I left with Lexapro as well as Trazodone to go to sleep, with the appointment with the psychiatrist as well to manage that medication. And I just went on my way, and I started smoking the marijuana every day, all day, 24 hours a day. And that just destroyed me because it numbed everything. I wasn't able to process what had happened to me, what had been done to me, the choices I had made, my actions. And I just was so bitter and angry. And I just wanted to just completely disconnect and dissociate from the world. And my friends from my church still held on and just were there for me through thick and thin. I had some pretty hard talks with them at some points, especially when I started dabbling with other drugs as well. And yeah, I just didn't care anymore. I think that was the biggest thing.
Well, that's the standard of care now, is to mitigate the pain and medicate it. It isn't resolving the root cause of the problem.
Yes.
You needed somebody that was skilled to help you verbally, emotionally, but above all, I think spiritually begin to purge the constitution of the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that was afflicting your spirit, your soul, your body. I don't think we have a mental health community that is well equipped to deal with the magnitude of the addiction problem that we're facing. And as you well know from working here with me, we see it every day.
Yeah.
And I hope that I'm so thankful you're willing to tell the story, because I hope this inspires us all, that we all have the constitution within ourselves and within the content of our relationships to really facilitate healing and recovery. If we can just stop and listen, hear what people are saying, listen to each other with our hearts, and ask questions. And when people speak, just love and let them decompress a lot of this poison that compounds through trauma. And I know how often I hear from our firefighters and our first responders that when they're dealing with trauma, for example, and PTSD, that often leads to addictions as well, to numb the pain, that the standard of care is to medicate them. And the first 5 first responders categorically had compounding stress and shame and despair from the fact that they were immediately offered medication before any modality was introduced to decompress the trauma that is registered in their body, that is imprinted in their soul, and that energetically and spiritually haunts them. And I'm not sure we have a mental health care program. And, it's to this end that we labor. We want to expand the conversation beyond what's conventional to perhaps make space so that you didn't have to end up on that beach in that way. And I know, obviously, and this is near and dear to your heart, but that's why we invite people to rest.
Yeah.
And we have to listen with our hearts, our mind, our heart, our will, our conscience. We need to listen to each other. But we can't do that if we're not willing to hear what people are saying. And as we hear and as we listen, we need to take that whole person into account. Because the darkness, the spiritual darkness that was drowning you was so obvious to anybody that laid eyes on you. And you're this beautiful girl gifted, talented, tender-hearted, beautiful girl, but the darkness, and I didn't even meet you at those times, at the darkest time of your life. You did manage. So I just want to encourage people listening that there's so much you can do right now. And that is humble yourself, be quiet, put your hand over your mouth while people speak, and let them tell you what they feel and what they think and where they're at. And don't fear that. Say, oh, good, this is so good that you're able to find words to communicate things, right?
Exactly.
And I'm not saying there isn't a time for medication, but we need to be careful because every single one of those first responders became suicidal within a period of 2 or 3 days to the point that they almost couldn't control themselves. And it was specifically what they were given. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. You've been here with me. I just thought it was unbelievable that every one of them said, please, I don't want to be medicated. Every one of them.
Yeah. Well,
Did you say that when you went in for treatment, or did you have the presence of mind to say that? Or?
No, I didn't, but I got it later on because with the medication that they gave me, it made me more suicidal.
Right.
The medication that was an antidepressant, and it just, my body and my mind were literally rejecting it. And one of the other medications, that sleep medication I mentioned earlier, I actually tried to overdose on that because of what my mind was telling me about how I just didn't want to live anymore. All those lies that I'd been fed from childhood to being with my ex, I just ended up taking about like 30 of them at my job that I was at.
This is after the beach incident.
After the beach incident, like maybe like 6 months later, I tried taking them at a job at my work, and I had to go in the bathroom and try and make myself be sick to try and get them to come out of my system. And I ended up telling my boss, HR got involved, and I wasn't able to come back. And I felt like you were saying earlier, I didn't feel heard. I didn't feel seen. It was such a cry for help that I didn't know what to do or where to turn to. So I kept turning to the only thing that I just had seen and knew what to do, which was partying, drinking, and smoking.
Yeah,
and medicating, because the other ones were definitely not helping. So I just threw all those in the trash and just stopped seeing the psychiatrist. And I was like, I can do this. I'm going to do this my way. Something that was grown in the earth. I'm going to smoke that and socially be accepted and just cared for by, of course, the people that did not have my best interest and was continuing to just be just divided, going to church, being with all my church best friends, and then continuing to be on that other side as well. And I just felt like torn. I was like literally just that rubber band ready to snap. And after dating someone else who ended up being a drug dealer and just taking, again, these drugs that I didn't even know the names to, I just was so confused to the point where, like we talk about all the time, there was just chaos just living inside of me. And I just was so uneasy just where my life was and how it turned out. And I finally, years later, said enough was enough. And I was like, something's got to change. Like that relationship ended with the drug dealer. And I finally started going back to therapy. And I finally was just like, did a complete 180. And I was like, no more. Started going to recovery meetings. I went to so many recovery meetings to try and find out where I fit in. I went to SLAW, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous for Women, AA, NA, Al-Anon. And then I finally found MA, Marijuana Anonymous, which finally I found like the healing was going to start and begin.
Which was the toughest coping mechanism to release?
The toughest coping mechanism to release was marijuana. That's why I chose that one instead of Alcoholics Anonymous, because marijuana had literally become my idol. I had like a little stand for a long time where it looked like a shrine to marijuana. Like it'd become my God. And God knew that. And he was not happy, but he still kept pulling me back in, pulling my heart towards him. Like, even though you're choosing this, I'm not going to leave you. During those times where I was in my room, smoking alone, wanting to call, sometimes actually calling the suicide hotline because I just had no one to turn to.
Yeah. Anything that disenfranchises us from ourselves, disconnects us from ourselves, is not in alignment with the wholeness of all the resources God gave us to connect with him, ourselves, and each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see why you sensed this discomfort in doing it and you didn't want to. I mean, it's a far cry from being whole, which is what you were seeking, wholeness.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.